Marvel's Spider-Man is an action-adventure game developed by Insomniac Games and published by Sony Interactive Entertainment. Originally released to PlayStation 4 in 2018, and then it was brought over with a remastered version in 2020 to PlayStation 5. It's now 2026, and going into the game, I wasn't really sure how much I was going to like it. I like Spider-Man well enough, but I wouldn't really call myself a Spider-Man fan. I expected a fun open-world superhero game, and what I ended up getting was a platinum experience that really surprised me a lot more than I thought it would. Going into this game, a lot of people told me that the web swinging was the best part of the game, and I think that they're right. I think that the traversal in this game is some of the best in any game I've ever played, and it is the #1 high point of this game for me. The web swinging feels incredible, and after you get used to it, which takes just a few seconds, you're moving through the city and it genuinely feels like you're in a Spider-Man movie. There were moments the game didn't really do what I wanted it to do with the web swinging, like trying to land on buildings was a little finicky at times, or in combat especially, it was kind of hard sometimes to kind of orient yourself when you're swinging around so fast, but it never really got old swinging through the city. There is a fast travel system in the game, but I really never used it until the very end when I was just kind of like trying to clean up the last little bit of the platinum requirements with the street crimes. But other than that, just flying through New York felt so fun that I never really wanted to use fast travel anyway. The city itself is really like an expansive, beautiful city, and the lighting really does a lot of the heavy lifting here. The scale of the city feels like amazing. You always feel like you're just such a small person in this world, but you're swinging through so fast. And the sun cuts between the buildings when like there's certain moments, or the moonlight or the street lights just makes it stunning to look at. Now, on the other hand, if you're really used to RPG games rather than this more traditional style action game, the city can feel a bit empty with the NPCs and the cars driving around. If you stop and kind of like walk the streets, it doesn't really feel as engaging as some other games I've been used to playing more recently. This is the first true action game I've played for a pretty good while, so that might throw you off for just a moment, but once you're swinging through the city and jumping off buildings, you'll never think twice about it. The story itself was pretty straightforward, and I'll be honest, it didn't really grab me at first. But as the story progresses, though, I think some of the twists are really interesting, and then the villains you get to meet along the way really help to lift the story up past where I thought it was going to be when I first got through that first act. The story follows Peter Parker as Spider-Man, and really early in the game you take out Kingpin, or Wilson Fisk, and then that kind of opens up the world for more criminal organizations to rise through. So the story really begins Act 1 with setting this up, and then you start to get some more villains that take place as you go into the later acts of the game. So for me, I think that Act 1 did a fairly good job of setting up the rest of the game, even though it did feel a little bit weak. Once Fisk is defeated, the demons begin to rise up, and Martin Lee's transformation into a villain in this wasn't really that interesting to me because it was really telegraphed, I feel like, in the first act, and it just didn't feel that impactful. So I was really worried that that was going to be the main bulk of the story, was going to be just fighting him the whole time, and I didn't really find him really interesting at all until Act 3. At a certain point in the story, these bigger villains get let loose into the city, and you have to go take those on in some 2v1 boss fights. And I really feel like that is where the game started to hit its stride a little bit more. I really liked the boss fights that paired the villains together because it forced you to juggle different mechanics and gimmicks at the same time, and it made those encounters way more engaging than just like a one-on-one boss fight would be, I believe. As for the characters in the game, I thought that the voice acting across the board was solid for all the characters. Otto Octavius was by far my favorite character though, and the slow build up to him being Doc Ock was handled very well in my opinion. And this kind of goes back to like it being super telegraphed that Martin Lee was a villain. It was also super telegraphed that Doc Ock was the villain, but even though his turn is really obvious, it does take its time showing why he gets there. And he doesn't just feel evil for evil's sake. He has a reason, and he feels human and frustrated. And that really was one of the highlights of the game for me, was going through some of his files and reading things. And then, of course, the game and the cutscene explains a little bit more about his problem and why he is becoming a villain. Another character that surprised me a lot was Miles Morales. I knew going into this that there was obviously the Miles Morales game, and then after that, of course, Spider-Man 2. But I was expecting this mission with Miles towards some early parts of the game to be kind of like a setup mission, and then that was a one and done. That's just a mention that, oh, later there'll be a second game or whatever. But it really turned him into more of a character than I expected. He got a bigger role than I was anticipating, and by the end of the game, he was really one of my favorite characters. Aunt May didn't play as central a part of the story as I figured that she would in the beginning. They show her a lot more than they do towards the middle and end, but it really did kind of have an emotional moment there at the end, and that helped, I think, build upon the other character relationships surrounding that event a little bit more. And one of those relationships that I was really worried about was Peter and MJ. Throughout the first part of the game, I was really kind of annoyed with their relationship and a little bit worried that it wouldn't feel satisfying. But towards the end, it did start to bring itself together, and I think it ended on a really nice level. Combat in this game was super simple, but I found it really fun. Early on, I was again worried because I thought it was going to be just the same, like spamming the button, like just to do the kick and launch and repeat. But as the game progressed, it really did open up. Once you unlock your gadgets and some powers to go along with them, your power fantasy really hits a sweet spot where you feel like you're Spider-Man, clearing rooms and stealthing the bases out while you're webbing enemies to the walls or grabbing rockets midair and throwing them back to hit the enemies. It was all really satisfying. The enemy variety keeps things moving too, especially when it starts to get into the Devil's Breath stuff a little more. You start to see that, oh, okay, I'll use this power for this enemy, and I can use this gadget against these enemies. You get sword enemies, tanks, shields, whips, the missile launchers, and every one of them kind of forces you to adapt, just enough to keep combat interesting. That being said, though, I really did not like the Sable enemies. They were particularly annoying to me. The jetpack troopers were my least favorite enemy to fight in the game. They were so hard to hit because you couldn't really lock onto them, and they were just flying around, and when you dodged their abilities, it kind of just didn't give you much room to do a counterattack because you just couldn't lock back onto them. And to go along with that, I think that's why the Sable camps were my least favorite part of the open world. There were just waves of enemies with no checkpoints, and then those annoying jetpack troopers, so that section was a little bit frustrating. Speaking of some of the open world side content, the game always has something to do, and sometimes I felt like that was almost too much. The crime events randomly pop up as you swing through the city, and while I really like that keeps the map clear of all these markers and clutter on the map, the frequency kind of felt a little bit silly. There was a couple times where I would do a side mission that came up randomly, and it would be like a bomb threat, and you would do the bomb threat and then start to swing again, and the next street over there was another bomb threat by the same faction. And then you do that one, and then you start to swing over, and then, oh, there's a shootout, and then you stop and do that on the next street. It just felt a little bit too much at times. And I know New York is a big city, and they want you to obviously have stuff to do all the time. So it just felt a little comical how frequent the repetitive missions were. The worst offender in this, in my opinion, was definitely the car chases, because they didn't take very long, but they were almost all pretty much identical. And then the car wrecks at the other crime scenes were all laid out the exact same, with the exact same like thing you had to do. And I know that they can't individually make 200 interactions that are all different, but I would have liked a little bit more variety than they gave us. And that's possibly fixed in Miles Morales and Spider-Man 2. I'm not sure, I haven't got that far yet, but these are optional, which is good. And even though they are repetitive, they never really got too annoying, except for I think I made a personal mistake by not doing them kind of as I went. When the open world opened up, it gives you the backpacks and the research stations, and I went and done all of those and the photo ops. And doing that, I kind of skipped a lot of the crime interstitial notifications as I went through. When I got to the end of the main story, I had to go back and clean up a lot of these districts for the platinum. And that was definitely my fault. It just made the last couple hours of the game feel really grindy for me because I was going through and just doing the exact same missions over and over and over, which is for sure a me problem. I should have done them a little bit at a time as I went, but I just wanted to get the collectibles out of the way and then play the main story for a little while. Moving on to the actual side quests, most of them were forgettable, even though I did enjoy the photo-based, like find out where the student is missing ones. The research stations I found the most interesting out of any of the side content in the open world because they introduced a different gimmick each time. Mini games like the puzzle and Otto's lab were fine. They weren't really overbearing, but when you're in the main story and then they throw one in randomly a couple times in a mission, it kind of got annoying because it threw you out of the flow a little bit. And that is another problem I have with the Mary Jane missions, which I think most people have a problem with. The Mary Jane stealth sections just felt like walking simulator cutscenes, and they took you out of the action, and they didn't really provide much, even in the way of variety. The only time they felt like there was any variety at all were when you were in Norman Osborn's apartment and you got the stun gun. That did feel a little bit more engaging, but overall, they were very simple and just annoying to go through. Just really slowed the pace of the game down, in my opinion. Although I've already touched on this a little bit, the visual presentation of the game is gorgeous. The lighting does a whole lot of the heavy lifting here, especially when you're swinging around. The soundtrack fits the superhero vibe really well. Something I did notice was in the lab sections when you were doing the puzzles, it weirdly reminded me of the Starfield soundtrack. But that might have just been me. The suit variety is fantastic in the game. There's a lot of fan service suits, and having a unique perk for each suit made them all worthwhile when you unlocked them. Backpacks and collectibles were also fun excuses to swing around and see more of the city, and doing the little photo ops was also fun, which made the grinding feel way better than it could have if there was nothing tied to it lore-wise. The backpacks all had a little bit of lore in the collectible that you could read, and they were all fun to kind of make references to the comics and the movies. As for the platinum itself, it was a very straightforward platinum. As far as I can tell, there are no missable trophies, and the only thing you need to plan ahead for is to buy all the suits. If you're not doing the DLC, you'll want to make sure you manage your tokens as you go, but if you are planning on doing the DLC, I'm pretty sure there's plenty of tokens to go around. Like I said, my biggest mistake was not doing the street crimes along the way. I hit the end of the game and had to grind out all the thug, demon, prisoner, and sable crimes, district by district, which really turned into a slog that I could have avoided if I would have just spent a little extra time as I went along. Other than that, the platinum is clean, accessible, and doesn't really demand anything unreasonable, so I feel like it's a really easy platinum to go after if you're just starting out platinum hunting like I am. Overall, I think Marvel's Spider-Man was an excellent time. The story didn't really hook me until Act 3, but like I said, when it did, it really landed the plane. The slow burn of the villains and Doc Ock paying off and the twists and turns along the way were really fun, and some of them even unexpected. The surprising thing to me was that the side characters at the beginning that I didn't think were going to be as integral as they were turned out to be one of the better parts of the game to me. While the side content and combat got a little bit repetitive, the traversal and presentation and overall power fantasy that the game provides towards the end really carried the experience and made it worthwhile. I do think I like Spider-Man a little bit more than I like Ghost of Tsushima, so I am glad that I experienced it, and I really enjoyed it far more than I expected to, and it made me really excited that there's now the Miles Morales spin-off and then of course Spider-Man 2 to get to after this. So honestly, that alone made the platinum worth it. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, leave me a like. If you've played Spider-Man before, leave me a comment and tell me if you think it's better than Ghost of Tsushima. I'm on to my next platinum. If you want to see that, subscribe. Anyway, take care of yourself, and I hope to see you in the next one.